There he is.
Hey, bro. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We'll probably have probably just about 30 minutes on this one, if that's the right one, because I've got to get to bed, and but it's good to catch up. And we're going to keep this super clean for our favorite channel. So we're going to do our best. So, alrighty, I'm going to. There's a nice ice 17. Very good. Very good.
Yeah, there you go. So there's the
nice
view out across Vegas right now, and there's the new dome that they're building. That's all going to be lit up. It'll have all sorts of stuff on the outside of it. It'll be a big domed movie screen, if you will, inside and out. So it's pretty interesting what they're doing there. If I can see it better over here, maybe. So
very good. Alrighty. Well, I'll kick us off. I'll introduce us. So good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are, everyone. Welcome to Psych Club and the Tom Numbers Show. I'm Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers. I'm here with Rachel from WriteSide Blonde. We're both on YouTube. Check out our various channels. And we have Mr. JuanOSavin, who is at 107daily.com. So tell us more about this dome then. I like this metaphor, this image that you're giving us about a cinema inside and out, because I'm thinking there might be something like that coming. So yeah, please continue.
Well, it's going to be covered in a clear material, opaque material, and they'll be able to project images all over that surface, and it'll be pretty spectacular. I mean, it's going to be like somebody dropped planet Earth or something in the middle of Vegas.
Wow.
It'll have all sorts of great imagery going across it and around it and all sorts of things. So it should be pretty fun when it's done. And I understood it was running a little bit behind all of a sudden. A number of projects are because of supply issues for a lot of the materials coming out of Asia and around the country. And of course, that's a common theme right now. In fact, I've got other friends who are building a hotel, and they were running ahead of schedule, 4 months ahead of schedule back in January, February. And then because of supply issues, this was a 2.5-year building project. Now they're saying that they're going to be lucky to get it done by Christmas time. So the flow of goods around the world is starting to slow down, and reflected in stuff coming in from China and other places around the globe. And then even transportation across the U.S. is just hitting the early buffeting stages of some supply issues. And of course, we've had diesel fuel now for trucks and trains. A number of companies have alerted their staff and drivers to keep the trucks full at the end of the day. And then DEF fluid, there's some concern about the supply of that, which is something needed for the exhaust emissions. Otherwise, the computers in the trucks are set from the factory to just go to an idle mode. They don't run properly unless you've got the DEF fluid to stop sooty emissions. And then the lubricating oil for the engines themselves takes a very specific type of lubricating oil. If you use like car oil for the normal car, your diesel truck engine will probably blow up pretty quickly. So there's serious supply issues in the offing for the diesel lubricant, and both trucks and trains also again. And so there's question, how manufactured is this crisis that we're coming into, similar to other crises that we've had going on in the country, supply issues. And, I think it's a reasonable expectation that that's going to continue to accelerate through the summer and into the fall, and cause some problems in the economy here in the States. And of course, that reflects out to the rest of the world, including you guys over there.
Yes.
Making me want to go fill up my car.
Well, the
Just about.
gas is regular fuel, gasoline fuel doesn't appear to be in the same kind of a problem for the time being. It is a supply chain impacting issue with diesel engines, which are the heavy over the road trucks and trains. And so, and you don't turn that on and off on a dime, because refineries have to get all the various additives in place to be able to operate, to make those fuels work correctly, and the oils and things like that. So it's a process to dial it up. And the question is, where were these things put in place to slow it down? How engineered is that? And what I've seen so far appears to say it's pretty engineered. Somebody had a plan.
I work in the housing industry with builders, and it's been a chore just getting a house built.
Yeah. Well, again, even in the housing stuff like that, everybody's feeling it all of a sudden. And then with the threat of interest rates starting to rise, there's been a push to get the houses finished and sold as quickly as possible before the interest rates go up. Because as interest rates go up, the sale price on houses goes down because there's less buyers able to afford that. So you'll see a little surge, and then it kind of drops off the map. And it's a very precarious moment for builders, because when the market's gyrating, a lot of them get wiped out, and for the workers and like that. So very stressful moment, and I feel it for all the folks that are in that industry.
Do you think prices will continue to go up and then they're going to drop?
Well, that's classically what happens, because you get a sprint. Because as rates come up, interest rates come up. Let's say that you had a house and you were going to pay, I'm just pulling numbers out for sake of discussion, it was going to jump from 4% interest to 5% interest a year. And let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that you have $100,000 condo that you're buying. Well, on a $100,000 condo, if you have 4% interest, that's $4,000 a year in interest. Plus you got to pay down the actual loan a little bit. So you might pay, $6,000 a year, and or $7,000 a year total. And that if it goes up to 5%, now you're paying, another $1,000 a year just in the interest rate. And so people don't want to do that. If all of a sudden your cost for that money goes up $1,000, maybe you don't qualify for the loan. And, I'm using a super low number. Most of the houses out there right now are selling, $500,000 for entry-level houses. So now you're talking an extra $5,000 a year just in interest with a 1-point change. And that's a big jump, because, that's, technically it's going to end up being like, $500 a month, just a little shy of that. So if you're stretching to buy a house, and all of a sudden it's going to cost you an extra $450 or $500 a month for the same house, does that make it so you can't buy the house now? Because they look at your income, they look at how much money you got, and they decide, you just don't qualify. So what happens is the guys selling the house will drop the price accordingly, and to get the buyers in there. And when the guys are building houses and the margins are thin, and now all of a sudden supplies have gone up, fuel's gone up to finish the house, workers want more money because it costs more to get to the job site. You have both sides, the supplies and the employees and the buyers, pinching on the builders. And the builders are on thin margins. All of a sudden they can't afford to build a house. So they just start closing the doors, you start laying off workers, and you'll have a surge of houses sitting there because there isn't enough buyers. When prices start to drop, people don't show up as much to buy because they're waiting to find out where the bottom is. So classically, when real estate gyrates, A light gyration is 20%. The one in 2007-8 was ultimately into 2009 was about a 40% peak to trough. And that included places where nobody thought that house prices would drop off the map, including waterfront properties in both East and West Coast. And it's similar in other periods. We can go back and look, and everybody, it's shocking, but you can have a peak to trough 40%. In this particular situation, that is probably a realistic number. Nobody wants to say it right now. All the realtors out there are, panicking that I've even said such a thing. But that's the way these things happen, and the attempt to shut down the economy in the United States. It's a very manufactured situation to stress America, because there's globalists that want to step into the void. And so they are trying to set us up for some type of an internal chaotic moment and crash.
Juan, I wanted to ask you also about, two things, about Roe versus Wade, and also about Q coming back online. I know you've got some thoughts about that. Just some numbers briefly on Roe versus Wade. If you spell Roe, R-O-E, and then versus V-E-R-S-U-S, and Wade, that comes to 175. Roe is 38 gold. Versus is 104 Jerusalem, and Wade is 33 gate magic there. If you do the first domino, that comes to 175 as well. And interestingly enough, the day that took place last Friday was the 24th of June, which happened to be the 175th day of the year. And some other numbers that come to 175, one of them is consciousness. So I wondered what you see in terms of a trajectory and kind of a moment that's happened then. What other things you see kind of coming from that? And I wanted to go into Q as well afterwards, if we could. And then Rachel.
Well, let me just say this on the Roe versus Wade thing. I've spoken extensively about this curse on America, and the reality is that there is a blood curse that existed coming out of Dallas, both with the assassination of our president and then with Roe versus Wade, and guilt with that. And so the devil loves it when he can get us to do things that force God to judge us. And, it's not what he does, it's what he can trick us into doing. And then God is the one doing the punishing. People say, well, the devil's doing this, and the devil made me do that, and the devil caused all this harm to me. And usually he tricked you into doing things that brought harm on yourself. You sow, you reap. And so being tricked into doing something that is at odds with God's will is the devil's way. It says that Eve was beguiled by the serpent. And so beguiled, by the way, has sexual innuendo to it. But, he was a cad. He was sneaky. He fooled her. And it wasn't till after the fact, after it was too late, that she, realized the consequences fully of what she'd done. And so he sold her a bill of goods. America got conned into some stuff. And by the way, what the Supreme Court said precisely is that a prior court erred in its ruling. This court said that a prior Supreme Court, in finding that the federal government could legislate or force that abortion be legal across the country, the court acted in lieu of the legislature, and it was legislating from the bench, is the way we say it. So they forced something, saying that the law said something that now this court is saying the law doesn't allow for this at all. It's a states' rights issue. The federal government had no business making this decision, and there's other decisions that the federal government's been making that also are at odds with the Constitution, the contract between the people and its government. And so federal overreach has been taking place. And so that's what this moment is all about. And in fact, you know, all these years, I've been talking about the fact that that federal city was being run by people who have interests outside of the United States and controlling the United States in ways that the Constitution doesn't allow them to, in violation of the Constitution. Exactly what the Supreme Court just agreed with. We had another ruling in the Fifth Circuit that said that the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, does not have legal authority to do many of the things that it's done. It's no more federal Security and Exchange Commission in its position than Federal Express. Well, if you look at that ruling, by extension, it's also talking about things that the Federal Reserve does and the IRS, because the IRS is not operating as a federal agency. Again, no more federal than Federal Express. Yes, you have federal employees managing things, but it's a Puerto Rican corporation, same as the Federal Reserve, Puerto Rican corporation. And the courts have not chosen to hear cases related to that. So there is a tremendous pushback around the country towards federal activity, and saying that something's wrong. Washington, D.C. is out of step and doing things that it's not allowed to do. That's stuff that Reagan talked about. That's stuff that goes back to Eisenhower and Kennedy. And we're revisiting all those issues right now. And that is the conflict we're in as a country right now.
Thank you. And Q appeared to come back online on the same day as Roe versus Wade, and a lot of people are excited, including myself and Rachel. And but what are your thoughts on what appears to be Q coming back, Juan?
I think we need to all take a deep breath and relax. We know that there's a lot of captured operations, even within agencies of government, sometimes in the hacker world and data world, things that were secure at one point become not so secure at a later point in time. What I would suggest is in the earlier Q stuff that was out there, we had a number of occasions where proximity to President Trump was undeniable in the photographs. And I don't just mean, although it was there, say a watch or a location at a desk, etc., but proximity, direct proximity to the president is a very good indicator that we're dealing with valid materials. And without that authentication, and that was what existed in the earlier stuff, I would be very skeptical of anything that comes out at this point in time for a number of reasons, and would suggest that let's take a deep breath. There's nothing critical or actionable that's there, so let's take a deep breath for the moment and allow it to develop. And by the way, I actually am going to do a presentation here shortly. I was hoping to do it a week or two ago, but I'll probably do it over the weekend here, discussing the McAfee stuff and other similar operations. In the spy world, there's a lot of bends and twists and strange characters that pop in and pop out, and the use of covers, symbology, players. I'll talk about that a bit and try to draw a little bit more light on this subject matter. And, we all take a deep breath. It's fun, it's interesting, it's a curious thing. But, the one thing I want to say to all of those people within this community that may be following things like that, I've said this many, many times to business people, what you do to get into business is not the same as what you do to stay in business. And in getting things rolling, getting people looking, a lot of the anons, if you will, were 5 years younger when this started. And it was, it was aimed at gamers, aimed at folks that had some time in their hands, interested in discovering and learning. And it was a mouse hunt. And they learned a tremendous amount. They understand the world a lot better. They've seen things that they weren't necessarily looking for before they began looking at the Q posts, all of the anons. Look at the information. For all that you may have seen Q posts, the memes, the discovery, the bits and pieces of information that came out through the anon community, anon being anonymous, all posting under coded, numbered stuff so they couldn't be readily discoverable. Those pieces, those bits of information have trained up a very large army of people who now look at the world and they're not as mystified on how things are working or should work or could work. I apologize. I thought I had the calls turned off. So at this point, they're much older, wiser. Some of them have families now that didn't have families before. And we've all grown up. Everybody needs to grow up right now. We're in a very serious situation. When kids go into military service at a relatively young age, in their late teens, early 20s, and they get exposure to a lifestyle, other people, people from other places around the world, or go to places around the world, they come out from that experience a lot different. They grow up a tremendous amount. Those that have to go to wartime situations, combat zones, etc., even more so. Everybody in that anon community needs to take a deep breath, realize that you got a gift to mature tremendously. Everybody that it got to experience what President Trump was able to do for the country, the fights that he was in to try and administer the country in the best way possible to make things go as smoothly as possible for us against a very strong current. And now we're seeing the other